Very good day to all of you. I'm very pleased to be here. I came all the way from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I hope you will be able to visit one day. Thanks also to Harry Rice for inviting me to share with you some knowledge about the complexity of the South American regulations. So the idea of this presentation is to just show you a short description of the region, which is really very complex. Indeed, it is very easy to understand the complexity of the region due to the fact that there are many countries which are independent regulatory-wise. We'll talk about Mercosur, which is one of the biggest blocs within the region, and then we'll talk about nutritional and health claims per country. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you some ideas on how to collaborate to be able to reach common integration so that we can allow more products into a complex market. So what we'll see is that Mercosur is the largest trading bloc within the region. And the original idea behind the Mercosur creation was to eliminate obstacles to internal trade. And one of the main obstacles is regulatory situations. So the idea was to get to an ultimate South American economic integration, which has not been reached in the last 20 years. It comprises Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay and Paraguay, and Venezuela also is part of the Mercosur, and the Mercosur has a total population of 285 million people that live in a surface that it's bigger than the whole of Europe. So here you have the population comparison between the Mercosur countries, those 5 countries, and the rest of the region, and also the territorial area which they occupied. As you see, this is a very important trade region, and in graphic you can see those are the initial 4 countries and the additional Venezuela integration, and then in green you can see the rest of the countries that will become part and that are called associate members. So the importance of the Mercosur is that it has a collective output of $1.1 trillion, and it accounts for 75% of the total gross domestic product. And also, it is the 4th largest trading bloc after NAFTA, the European Union, etc. So what about the associate members? Those members do not enjoy the full voting rights that the normal members, the complete members have, and do not share the food regulations. Only Venezuela very recently has started participating at the Mercosur meetings. And how do we deal about regulations within the Mercosur? Where Mercosur group, there's a special group called SGT3, and that's the food group. And just for you to know, food supplements and food are integrated into that group, SGT3. And it gathers 4 times a year, 1 semester in one place, and then it turns to another place on the next semester around the 4 main countries. When a norm is gazetted in the Mercosur Gazette or web page, it does not mean it will enter into force in all of the 4 countries. It does have to follow a procedure within each country until it's fully integrated in the country's legislation. So it's a very long period, and not all the food regulations are harmonized. Now, in order to decide which is the one that you're going to choose to make sure you have the regulation in place, there is a priorities that are chosen, and Codex, of course, is number 1, EU directives number 2, and then you have the FDA regulations. Now, when you have to look at some harmonized regulations, there you have the list, and as you can see, nutritional health claims are not included. So we'll see in a very hasty way what has been done so far. Recently, the nutrition content claims have been finalized and published, and health claims are different per country, so there's no harmonization in health claims. Also, you will see that there are certain nutrient content claims that can be done, and fortunately, they have been set at the beginning of this year. We have those levels for source and high content of omega-3s. It is funny, but you should also learn that nutrient content claims have been allowed for omega-6 and omega-9. So as you can see, levels are quite high. Now, regarding the rest of the countries, here we have a comparative chart that shows the situation in Chile, Brazil, and Argentina. And since it is such a big information, you'll see some charts that you will be able to review when you go back to your offices. But the main things you should remember when you leave the room are this. There is no integration whatsoever in health claims, and some countries do have specific requirements for approvals. Some have a safety assessment requirement guidance document that you can follow. Some have a sort of FDA nutrient content claims list that you have to comply. And Brazil is the only one that has a mandatory wording for health claims. So that's what you use, and you cannot innovate. So this is very old-fashioned, I would say, and the fact that this is the way it is, it's because not all of the regulations had been decided at the same time. So there are regulations that are as old as 1997, and some that have been gazetted in 2011. Argentina is the worst example, and I'm sad to say so, but the fact that Argentina has been waiting for Mercosur to decide on health claims, there are no regulations on health claims. So you'll see some fun examples that will, first we'll see what are the specific conditions and descriptors in Chile. The regulation in Chile has a different level, as you can see, and also it has a nutrient profiling requirement that also exists in Colombia, so that it tells you you can add omega-3 fatty acids to this type of food, and only this food has to comply these requirements. There are 2 health claims associated with omega-3s, and there you see them, omega-3s and reduction of the risk of cardiovascular disease and nervous system and vision improvement. So, and you have the claim framework, because this is the framework within which you need to find your own words. So that's a good thing. You can add to it or change it or customize it. Now, Brazil, as I said, has a mandatory health claim wording, and that's it. It says the consumption of omega-3 fatty acids helps maintain a healthy level of triglycerides when associated with a balanced diet and a healthy lifestyle. And that's it. You can't change it. You cannot add to it. And if you want to do so, you have to go to the authorities and request that something new is added to the list. Also, the level is different, and you will see this across the presentation. All the levels are different. So Argentina has a chaotic situation, labels. In the absence of a regulation, people do use health claims or omega-3s, but they choose to say whatever they want. So this is an example of canola oil with a claim helps reduce cholesterol. They are referring to omega-3 as linolenic acid, right? And they show it highlighted in the nutrition panel. So as you can see, it also has a heart, and it which encloses omega-3, 6, and 9. So really the situation is very chaotic. They also the region likes omega-3s of natural origin, and mostly all of them, if possible, vegetal origin. There is a big, big trend towards vegetable origin for omega-3. And this is a supplement which highlights the 100% vegetable. So this is the situation, a comparative situation in relation to nutritional and health claims in Peru, Colombia, and Ecuador. So Colombia and Ecuador have described their conditions in 2011. And as a reason, and because of that, they are very similar to the ones in the EU. There is a difference in the number of approved health claims, and in some cases, omega-3s are defined. In some cases, they are not. Colombia, in the bottom part, you'll see, also has a nutrition profiling requirement for a food that bears a health claim. So as we examine the need for a required level, you can see that also Colombia has enhanced the claim for a good source. You can also claim this as being with omega-3, or it provides omega-3, or it's a source of omega-3, not necessarily good source of omega-3, and it requires, it could be linolenic acid or both together, EPA and DHA. 40 milligrams minimum for a good source and 80 milligrams for high content. Also interesting, the fact that they are described in certain countries per 100 grams or 100 milliliters or a serving. So that is also different depending on the country. Now, Venezuela, as you see, has regulations from 1997. And Venezuela is very difficult to work with, so no one has dared go back and ask for anything. So the interesting thing is they do have a health claim example that mentions liver fish oil, and that's the only mention to omega-3s in the whole of the regulation, which is also very difficult to find. Sometimes these regulations are not posted on the internet. Of course, they are in Spanish, and they are papers that you actually have to go and ask to the authorities, and you have to request them, pay for them, and photocopy them or scan them, because they do not exist in an electronic format. So as you see, what are the implications on the sales of omega-3 products? You know, many of them. There is no common pattern for health claims wording. So that's difficult because you have to customize your product to be sent to Peru, or to be sent to Chile, or to be sent to Colombia. You have to change the formulation to comply with the norms of each country. No common nutrient profiling requirements. So you can use omega-3 and add it to a food or beverage, or in a certain way for certain countries, or you have to comply certain nutrient profiles to be able to add an omega-3 to a food. And of course, you should remember that only in Colombia, food supplements are considered medicines. In the rest of the countries in South America, all food supplements are considered foods and are dealt with the food authorities. So there are big opportunities because the functional food market is very large. I've worked in the functional food market for the last 20 years, and I can tell you it does work. So there are tremendous opportunities that you can use to sell your products, and you can be innovative. You can come up with food supplements, of course, but mainly with food. Food supplements, the food supplement market is not big except for Brazil, Chile, and maybe Colombia. It is very, very small in Argentina, and in the rest of the countries is emerging. So finally, you know, this is something that I always want to show you. This is a situation, and you all know that. You know, you can do a lot of efforts to produce very sound science and get to the market with various innovations, and you can try very hard to get products into the market. But the fact is, in order to cross the bridge, you need the regulatory situation solved, because it's very difficult to sell anything if you cannot market it. If you cannot sell the properties, you cannot advertise, you cannot write anything on the labels, it's very difficult. So I would say that this is all by now. What are the challenges and how can you help us? The challenges are that we should get to a point where we have finally South American integration and we share a common food regulatory pack of norms. If we cannot do that, or if we cannot strengthen our relationship with each country, it'll be very difficult to overcome the difficulties to sell in those markets. How can you help us? Well, you can help us, and who can help us? Of course, your organization can help us by going to the authorities and explaining what the situation is and asking for the norms to be reviewed. The local industry organizations can also help by bringing products that have been developed from other markets and showing to the authorities these cannot be imported into our countries because labels are not appropriate. Of course, the foreign regulatory agencies can help by approaching, and actually they all meet at the Codex meetings. So what we do is to relate with, authorities from other countries at the Codex meetings and try to talk about this. Active participation of all is needed, of course, to be able to bring more products into this broad market. And with this, I think I'll leave you with a nice postcard of my city, Buenos Aires, and I wish you all can visit one day. Thank you very much.